Carson Beck was a hindrance I've seen too many times when Beck wet the bed. That was Stephen A. Smith, who is on ESPN, as you know, every single day. That was what he had to say about Carson Beck, Georgia losing him in the playoffs. That might be the most harsh take of Carson Beck I've heard in a long time, and I am on social media during Georgia games. So I think that's super harsh. And it's one thing Stephen A. was talking about, and I understand these guys, they're not at every game like I am, and they're not there all the time. Sometimes they check in and watch some of the games. They play Alabama, maybe some stuff like that. It occurs to me that Stephen A. may want to tune in the last few games that Georgia played with Carson Beck, because they don't win against Georgia Tech without Carson Beck, period. He got 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. They don't beat Tennessee without 347 yards from Carson, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He made a lot of plays against Florida to win that game at the end. And, of course, the games he mentioned against Texas and Florida, where he did throw 6 interceptions in back-to-back games, Georgia won both those games by double digits in both cases, 15 and 14 points. So did Carson play well the whole season? No. Did he wet the bed? Stephen A., that's super harsh, man. I mean, that's super harsh. And this is kind of what we do, which is unfortunate. What we do is when someone has not won the national championship or not accomplished a major goal, although Carson Beck was the starting quarterback on an SEC championship team, and there's not a lot of those running around in college football. I think there's Jalen Milroe and Carson Beck. We're on to the next thing, and that's fine. Just because I'm saying what I'm saying about Carson right now doesn't mean that I don't think that Gunnar Stockton can play well. Because there in the world we live in, there's all sorts of gray. It's not black and white. You're not going to get a lot of that. And it has become popular because Carson did not play well during a particular stretch. I would say, 8 interceptions against State, Texas, and Florida games that Georgia won, all of them. It has become popular to just, I don't want to say, it's being overly dramatic, to be honest. I mean, that's just what it is. And, I'm not mentioning the Alabama game. I mean, Carson was as much the reason that Georgia got into trouble as much reason as they came back to nearly win that game. That was a difficult situation, very difficult to get into the game even. Just because of all the circus surrounding it, but I think we're overdoing it with Carson, period. And I think that to say that he was a hindrance is ridiculous. I mean, he was not a hindrance. And so what happens now is when you say that, and I live in this world too. When you say something, no one ever says, "Well, you said this and it was wrong." Well, I'm saying it's wrong now. Carson Beck was not a hindrance. The guy is, I think, let's see, 13 last year. And then 13 this year. No, yeah, 13. So the guy is 25-3 or something like that as a starting quarterback. Like, you think that's because of Kendall Milton or Pop, or like, why do you think Georgia's winning those games? The vast majority of the time is because of Carson. Now, that doesn't mean just, the person that Stetson replaced was Carson Beck. He was really good too. It doesn't mean that the guy that's going to replace Carson isn't really good, but he's not the same as Carson. I mean, like, think about these games. They got down to Alabama 28-0, I think it was. They don't storm back and get the lead with 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left without Carson Beck, period. It's not the guys dropping the ball. I mean, Cam Newton was on there talking about it. He's right. It was either him or the old Florida State quarterback. Got to catch the ball. And they were not doing that, E.J. Manuel, I think. So, Carson's been dealing with a lot. Now, it's too many interceptions, 12 interceptions in 13 games. That's probably a little bit too much. But he leads the conference in touchdown throws too. So if I'm not mistaken, if it's not him, it's Jackson Dart. This is the last day you're going to be able to do this. I'm not going to mention these again. This Kelee Ringo-signed. This is the moment against Alabama where Georgia won the first national championship in 40-plus years or whatever it was. So take a look at Kirby. I can get this to you by Christmas if you order it tonight. But, if you're waiting too long, I can't. The link is down below. And if not, just type in Kelee Ringo dog post signed. And you'll get it that way. You can find it too. But I'm going to leave it down below. I forgot to do it in a couple of our videos. But Stephen A. is doing what he does. I mean, I'm not even I'm not even hating. Like, this is what it is. It's for people to talk about, and that's fine. I think, just my take, generally speaking, you know, those of us who literally cover college football on a day-to-day basis, I mean, sure, we're more equipped and more apt to talk about these things than someone whose job is to cover a lot of different sports. I mean, I wouldn't know the first thing about Juan Soto or anything related to baseball. I mean, my knowledge of the NBA is fine because I play college basketball like Stephen A. did, but I don't follow it. This is literally what I do, and I'm just saying that language is super harsh. I've seen him wet the bed. I've seen too many times when Beck wet the bed. I think a lot of people could say that and it be fine if you're on social media. I think that argument is not one I would make, but I don't think it's anything like you're going to see that out there. He was a hindrance? No, that's just wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. I mean, people are wrong all the time, but Carson Beck was not a hindrance to Georgia. 3,400 yards, doing what he did. Come on, man. Like, I think a lot of people did watch the Tech game and got a chance to see what he did in that game alone. I mean, 5 touchdowns was pretty amazing. And, and 2 against Tennessee, 347 yards. That's and another 32 running it, 2 touchdowns, a touchdown running. I mean, the guy was responsible for three of Georgia's 4 touchdowns was a direct result of Carson Beck touching the ball by throwing it or running it. So let's not get too ridiculous with stuff. I mean, they lost to Ole Miss. Was that because of Carson Beck? No, it was not. Okay. I mean, when you go 20 of 30, 20 of 31, you're completing 65% of your passes. How are you at fault? So this is kind of, I want to push back on this whole thing. Did Alabama lose to Oklahoma because of Jalen Milroe? Did they lose to Vanderbilt because of Jalen Milroe? Did they lose to Tennessee because of Jalen Milroe? I think you could argue that he did not play well against Tennessee. Did he, let me get the quote right, wet the bed? Was he a hindrance? I don't know. I mean, I think you could say there are things that Jalen Milroe does well. But the way I'm talking right now does not convey as well or does not, do as well for I really don't want to I'm not trying to poop all over. I'm not trying to shit all over Stephen A. and necessarily with what he does. I understand what he does. But it is outrage porn after a while. And, that sells. We see that, in Washington, D.C. We see that in sports media. We see that generally speaking with people. When you're going to be with your in-laws this Christmas, you're not going to hear the story about how, you had a normal Tuesday. You're going to hear about all the bad stuff. I can assure you at in-law Christmas, you're going to hear all the bad stuff. You're going to hear the grievances. You're going to hear what's gone wrong. You're not going to hear about how well things are going. You're not going to, so it's again, this is a cycle. This is woe, not woe is me, but this is what we've done. This is the trap we've fallen into. I don't think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to say, hey, Carson needs to play better when he needs to play better. And that's what I said after these games. When you can't, one of the reasons why they got to a 28-0 hole, and perhaps one of the reasons why they lost the game just straight up, is just too many turnovers from Carson, period. And, and after the Florida game, you got to play better than that. But Texas, he just did not, that was not a good night for him. But he didn't prevent them from winning those 2 games. That's just the thing. What I think is ridiculous is the notion of hindrance. Wet the bed, you can describe a lot of athletes that way. You wouldn't describe it to them in their face like that, I don't think. But, the black and whiteness in terms of the way that we react to things is too much. Now listen, look, it looks like Carson. I mean, it's almost certain that Carson's played his last down at Georgia, and that snap was a championship winning snap. He handed the ball off to Trevor Etienne for an SEC championship. Why? Why did he hand that ball off? Well, I'll tell you one reason why. He didn't take his jersey off with what was turning out to be a season-ending injury. He did not take his jersey off. Does that matter? Does that part matter? Because Gunnar Stockton was not by rule permitted to go back into the game. He had lost his helmet on a non-targeting somehow, in quotations. I mean, that is amazing to me, to be honest with you, that was not targeting. But as I've learned from people that I trust around, targeting is what the official wants to say that day or even in that moment. So, whatever. Had that cost Georgia the conference championship, and it almost did if he fumbles, that's another conversation for another time. Georgia's playing this weekend, in Athens. We'd be getting ready. We'd probably be getting ready for the game right now. They probably would be a Saturday game, maybe, not a Friday. But, why did Carson hand that ball off? Because he was still in uniform, which is a suggestion that I can still play. I can play right now. And so when the call went through to, someone's got to go in, hey, Carson can hand it off. It was first down, okay? Because of Gunner's play, it was first down. Well, because of Oscar Delp, which set up Gunner's great run. But I think that part, now this is too nuanced for a discussion on First Take or even maybe even a non, podcast or, whatever these things are called. This is perhaps a more nuanced discussion, but we might need more nuance in life these days because we're doing a little too much. It's just this and that's it. That's not how life works. So it needs to be said that the reason why Carson was in the game was because he did not take his uniform off, even though he had ice pack here. He couldn't grip the ball at the half. I mean, I saw it. I was on the field. And, I very clearly remember that the Dr. Pepper people said to us, or me specifically, and probably three other people, Jason Getz, they said, hey, when the clock hits 0, we're going on the field. You can't be here. I said, we won't be here. Well, I didn't know that Georgia's starting quarterback would be on the ground holding his elbow or wrist, arm. It wasn't I don't recall it being his shoulder. It was like he was holding it down like this. And, I remember that very clearly. But the reason why, he was able to continue and hand the ball off is he stayed in uniform. Why did he stay in uniform if there was no way he could play? There was no real way Carson could play. I mean, look at the guy. He's on the ground. I mean, it wasn't a dirty shot or anything like that. It was a football play, and the guy got hurt. And then, because Georgia does such a good job with, preparation and, all of these things, Gunnar Stockton came in. They did some adjustments, but they were good enough to have practiced these moments as it relates to having Gunnar perform under Georgia. They don't change a lot of stuff. Now, they could change stuff in these next 3 weeks, or this 3-week period, I should say. Things could be very different, for sure. Here's another shot. This is a better angle, okay, from Ryan Curley at the game. He's holding his elbow, right? Which is as it turns out, is something that he was very, hurt. That's what it is. And here's, Gunnar on that, penultimate play. He almost scored a touchdown. Look at the 3 points of pressure, man. The ball's a little low, I guess, if you're being super picky. But, I just this is not targeting. I just don't even know. So the reason why this happened, you'll see the reason why Georgia won the Southeastern Conference Championship. The reason why this moment is occurring in the end zone. Cash Jones down here. You got Monroe Freeling on the ground. I don't know what he's looking at. The dome. Here's the better shot of Cash. Here's the confetti. The reason why all those things happen was because Carson Beck came in the play right here. This is the championship moment. This guy cannot move his arm hardly, but he's going to turn around and give the ball to number 1, who's right here. They're going to win. They're going to win it all. Georgia can't keep that up now. They're going to have to adjust here from this point forward. But I did want to correct the record. It's not from me. Carson Beck can take up for himself. And I'm not saying the guy played like an all-star the whole year. Did he play like a number 1 overall pick? He did not play like a number 1 overall pick the whole season. He did not. But to say he was a hindrance, no.